Hey, Congressman,
Trying to help you?
what the is up with Trump always chickening out on tariffs?
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
I really wonder why the Democrats are struggling to resonate with the American people, okay? How could they possibly be underwater even on an issue like the economy when they have stars like Eric Swalwell to present this type of riveting messaging to you? Oh my, unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. But okay, let's talk about some economic numbers today because things continue to trend positively in a good direction for Trump's economy. Of course, a quiet trend we have been covering is the way in which, despite all of the constant moaning and whining and screeching from the Democrats and the Trump opposition about the tariffs and the egg prices and all this, very quietly here, the Trump economy has continued to defy the so-called expert and economist forecasts and predictions time and time again, whether that's the inflation numbers coming in better than expected or the jobs report of April being higher than the economists were thinking. And it would appear here, ladies and gentlemen, that perhaps finally the experts are starting to admit that yes, Donald Trump's economy is trending in a positive direction, not a negative one. And very interestingly, it would appear even that some investors and bettors alike are beginning to withdraw their 2025 predictions of a recession that back during April, everyone was so sure was going to happen. Now, with that in mind, it still remains to be seen. I mean, things can change for sure. I don't think, for instance, that the economy is exactly where you want it to be. Okay, prices still could come down more. Trade deals have to be negotiated, but it's all about the trends, and the American people, it would appear as of recent polling that we'll also talk about here today, seem to be actually with Trump, at least much more than the Democrats, on the issue of the economy. And it seems that people are actually seeing things moving in a positive direction, and the Democrats still have a severe crisis of trust. So we'll tell you all about those things in today's video. First though, folks, do us a big favor. If you enjoy the content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. You subscribing is the best way to support our work and ensure that we can keep doing these videos. And with that said, I want to bring you some of the key economic news of today, which is that the Atlanta Fed has now just adjusted its estimation, right? Its prediction for second quarter GDP growth to 4.6%. That is what the Atlanta Fed is forecasting GDP growth in quarter two, 4.6%. Just a couple days ago, they raised that prediction up from 3.8%. Right, so it's 3.8%. And you may remember, guys, this is the same Atlanta Fed that was forecasting a very stagnant, very slow, like 2% growth rate back in April. Of course, we heard a lot of talk back then about the recession predictions. And of course, let's remember the official definition of a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Now, the first quarter, we did have negative growth. I would argue that in some ways it's misleading, considering, hey, a third of that quarter was under Joe Biden himself, right? Number one. Number two, government spending obviously took a huge cut. I'm not exactly sure why we even count that in our real GDP number. But nonetheless, okay, where are we headed now? Again, the estimate currently, according to the Daily Caller, is 4.8%, 4.6%, I should say. As you can see here, the Fed is now offering up a prediction that spells good news for Donald Trump's economy. We'll tell you about it. So the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta's growth for real GDP for the second quarter of 2025 increased once again on Monday. So they adjusted it up. Now they're adjusting it up again, because the Atlanta Fed's GDP Now model estimate is projecting that U.S. real GDP will rise 4.6% for the second quarter of the year. This marks an increase from 3.8% on just May 30th, according to the Atlanta Fed. Why are they saying these types of things? Well, this model estimate comes after, as we covered before actually, U.S. consumer confidence increased by 12.3 points in May, marking the first increase in 5 months So keep in mind here, right? This is a carryover thing from Joe Biden. Economy was slow under Biden. Trump inherited those issues, but now what's happening, right? The trends are reversing themselves. And, you could obviously sit here and say that, it's hard to judge because an argument I've often heard is that, Joe Biden basically was always denying reality on the economy, right? They said the economy was great, but no one was really feeling it. It's like, okay, my response to that is, let's ask people how they're feeling, right? Let's look at the actual polls, which economically for Joe Biden were never good. Okay, the polls repeatedly showed the American people never bought into it. And let's also look at things like, for instance, consumer confidence. Okay, so that's worth noting here. But moreover, the U.S. economy added 177,000 jobs in April, beating what? Economists' expectations, right? A repeated trend you're going to see here time and time again, similar to the first term. Those expert forecasts repeatedly discover themselves to be wrong, to be incorrect. So some recent polling has shown Americans currently feel that the U.S. economy is doing well under Donald Trump's leadership. A slight majority of voters, 51%, said the economy is strong. Well, that is certainly an improvement, right? Trending in the right direction here. You got a majority saying the economy is strong, according to a Harvard University Center for American Political Studies. So that's Harvard Harris, conducted back in May, ladies and gentlemen. Now, in a second here, I want to also show you, okay, what does it mean in the context of politics, right? Because how are, for instance, the Democrats handling all of this stuff politically? And we'll talk about that in a second because it is really bad for them. But first, a quick word from today's sponsors. So play it. Gold just broke $3,400 for the first time ever and is now trading well above the $3,300 mark. GDXJ index just hit a 12-year high. Silver hit $34 an ounce, which is a 12-year high recently. And these are all monumental milestones. The momentum for gold and silver is remarkable, with Goldman Sachs calling for $4,000 gold by mid-2026. I love that gold is trading at an all-time high in multiple currencies, and there's a lot more coming. The SLV ETF, which tracks the price of silver, has now hit a 12-year high. Wall Street investment banks are even bolder than I am about the future of gold, and judging by this chart, the potential for companies engaged in the business of commodities, mining, and hard assets is historic. Look at that gap. Beautiful. 5 years after bottoming out in the March 2020 market panic, silver has surged by more than 160%, and this is the primary reason I personally cannot think of a better time to highlight Argenta Silver's business model to you, which is sponsoring today's video. You need to hear this. One of Argentina's most prominent businessmen, Mr. Eduardo Elstein, with a track record in mining, just invested 5 million Canadian dollars into Argenta Silver, and with billionaire mining magnate Frank Griestra are calling this project a vehicle to fulfill a 40-year dream of theirs to scale a pure play silver company, which I'm featuring here to you. Eduardo joins Frank, a major shareholder of Argenta Silver, known on U.S. markets as AGAGF. And Frank Griestra has recently increased his ownership stake in Argenta to 13.5%, following the purchase of 2.5 million common shares of the company on the open market. Here's what he said. My decision to increase my holdings in Argenta reflects my strong belief in the company's vision to unlock the value of high potential silver assets and its disciplined approach to exploration. Argenta now owns 100% of the El Cuevar project located in Salta, Argentina. And this project hosts an indicated resource of 45.3 million ounces of silver at a grade of 482 grams per ton of silver and an inferred resource of 4.1 million ounces at 417 grams per ton of silver, making it one of Argentina's top 3 undeveloped silver deposits. I leave you with this. Argenta Silver's market cap is $31 million, with 7.8 million in working capital. The acquisition of the project was done at a fraction of the value, with $3.5 million acquisition cost over an estimated 60 million Canadian dollars in historical investment by the previous owners, including 100,000 meters of drilling. Listen to that one more time. The El Cuevar was acquired for $3.5 million after the previous owners already discovered the third largest undeveloped pure silver resource in Argentina and spent 60 million Canadian dollars historically. So that's why I encourage you to do your own homework. This is not financial advice, but do your own homework on Argenta Silver. Argenta Silver's ticker of AGF owns a pre-play silver project in Argentina. So I encourage you to research Argenta Silver and make wise financial decisions for yourself. Okay, so let's look, for instance, the Atlanta Fed is saying not just positive GDP growth, but very high positive GDP growth, right? 4.6% is an amazing number. What does that mean? You won't have back-to-back quarters of negative growth, so AKA, at least in the formal sense, not a recession. You look at, for instance, the betting markets, right? Currently on Polymarket, they're forecasting just a 30% chance of a recession in 2025, which is down from, of course, April, around Liberation Day, when those chances, people were thinking it was around, as you can see, 62 to 63% chance. So the chance of recession has cut down to half. And when you look big picture to the entire year here, right? Almost all the way down to where we were back in February or January, aka people have stopped panicking. People have stopped freaking out because they're like, oh, Trump rocked the boat a little bit. But guess what? He did not tear down the entire thing. Similar news today you're seeing out of JP Morgan, where just this month they have, of course, reduced their probability of a U.S. recession from 60%, they're saying majority chance, to 40%. So those numbers are trending down. And with that said, look, you can bring any criticism you want. Oh, the economy's not good enough. I agree, right? There's still work to do there. Okay, there's an agenda that needs to be fulfilled. Trade deals need to be done, all of that stuff. Okay, sure. But on the matter of politics, what you're going to very rapidly find out here is that the Democrats, okay, who are thinking to themselves, because this is really their only shot, right? Going into 2026, 2028 is a slow economy for Trump. Hey, we have a recession. We have a big crash that lingers, that actually stays around. That's the only chance they have in 2028, because they are not popular on any major issue, okay? They have a severe crisis of trust, as we've seen from the American people. And as you're going to currently find out, even despite all of the rhetoric, because people might say, oh, prices are not coming down enough. Oh, tariffs. Oh, inflation. Despite all of the, I'd say, bad economic headlines, not bad economic news, right, but bad headlines that you've heard around Trump in the past couple of months. Take a listen as CNN's Harry Enten recently explains just how badly Democrats continue to be underwater compared to Trump and Republicans on this very issue of the economy. This was just today.
There's 4 months of the Donald Trump presidency that you expect that Democrats would have this massive lead on the economy. It ain't so. It ain't so. The party that is closest to your economic views, in November of 2023, it was the Republicans by 11 points. Now it's still within that range, still within that margin of error. Plus 8-point advantage for the Republican Party. How is that possible, Democrats? How is that possible after all the recession fears, after the stock market's been doing all of this, after all the tariffs that Americans are against, and Republicans still hold an 8-point lead on the economy? Are you kidding me?
This is new CNN polling.
Yes.
How is that, when we look for trends, how is that trending with other data that you're pulling in?
Yeah, if it was just this one CNN poll, that would be one thing. But take a look at Reuters Ipsos. What do we see here? Party with a better economic plan. Well, in May of 2024, just before Donald Trump was reelected president, Republicans had a 9-point advantage. Look at where we are now in May of 2025. The advantage actually went up by 3 points. Now Republicans have a 12-point advantage when it comes to the party with a better economic plan. And again, this is after months of supposed economic uncertainty, in which the stock market's been going bonkers, in which the tariff wars that Americans are against have been going on. And yet, despite all of that, the Democrats are down by 12 points on the economy. This speaks to Democratic problems on the economy better than basically anything that you could possibly look at. The Republicans still hold an advantage on the all-important key issue of the day, and that is the reason why, even if Donald Trump's approval ratings are a little bit lower than they used to be, Republicans are not out of the ballgame because they still have a clear advantage on the economy, whether you look at CNN's polls or whether you look at the Ipsos poll right here, in which they have a 12-point advantage on the economy, Kate.
And also in the CNN data, it does show that Republicans are gaining ground in an area that is key relating to all of this, which is when it comes to the middle class.
Yeah. You know, historically speaking, which is the party of the middle class has been a huge advantage for Democrats. I have polling from NBC going all the way back since 1989 when Democrats had a 23-point advantage. 2016, a 17-point advantage. But by this decade, we already started seeing declines back in 2022 where you saw that Democrats led, but only by 4 points, well within the margin of error. And now in our latest CNN poll among registered voters, which is the party of the middle class, it is tied. This, I think, speaks to Democratic ills more than anything else. They have traditionally been the party of the middle class. No more. Donald Trump and the Republican Party have taken that mantle away, and now a key advantage for Democrats historically has gone adios amigos, and now there is no party that is the party of the middle class. Republicans have completely closed the gap, Kate.
All right. There's a lot of messages and a lot to be learned from these numbers and this data. It's good to see you, Harry.
Nice
Thank
to
you
see
so
you, Kate.
much. Still ahead for us. And
So that's just absolutely brutal, right? That's brutal for the Democrats. I think there's a couple things going on here. First and foremost, you might look at it and say, you know, even if you want to say it's within the margin of error, how could the Republicans still be basically enjoying the same, if not a greater advantage as compared to 2024 on the economy? And I think there's a number of things happening. First of all, again, that big question of, are we making the same mistake as Joe Biden, right? Which is to say, is the economy actually doing well for people? Or is it just kind of in our heads? Are we like manipulating GDP data to mislead people on what's actually happening? Well, again, if you're seeing that optimism, then clearly that points in one direction. And as I've brought up before myself, right, I have personally seen, for instance, you talk about something like core inflation. Gas prices where I live are way down. Okay. Now, some people say, oh, that's not the case for me. I live in a blue state. There does seem to be this disparity because I think a lot of people in southern red states are saying that prices are down, but people in like the West Coast are saying they're the same. So, you know, there's probably differences there. And, you know, it's not a universal picture. But clearly, enough Americans are saying, hey, I'm starting to see things trend in the right direction, that those numbers come out, number one. Number two, though, here's a big question I want to ask for people. You know, when we hear about tariffs and all the panicking and all the attacking of it and stuff, is it perhaps possible that the Washington, D.C., New York-based media, we will say, doesn't really understand the American people? And for instance, when you look at the coalition that got Donald Trump elected, for instance, white working class union voters up in the state of Pennsylvania, as we actually talked about, I believe, on Friday, is it perhaps possible that what Trump is doing right now, I don't know, maybe is a little more popular with at least certain facets of this country than we think? Do we just misunderstand that, right? You know, just this weekend, we covered how Trump is bringing U.S. Steel. He's actually saving its headquarters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Okay, he won Pennsylvania. That was the state that gave him the election, essentially. Is it possible that kind of affects the way? I don't know, just some thoughts there. But lastly here, I really do think the most pressing fact that we simply cannot ignore is, of course, the reality that forget Trump, forget the Republicans, the Democrats face a severe crisis of trust, right? And that was pretty straightforward, as you saw, for decades, right? Democrats have not only been considered to be the party of the middle class, they enjoyed a plus 10 to plus 20 lead on this issue, at least on this cultural idea. And what is it now? Tied, right? The Democrats are effectively wiped out. So not only are Republicans taking the working class nowadays, the middle class, it turns out, as well. That is, of course, devastating. And when you look to, to the clip we played in the beginning, for instance, why did I play that video of Eric Swalwell? Well, it's to demonstrate to you here just how much the Democrats are struggling with messaging. In fact, I know people get pissed off when we play a clip twice, but can we play that clip again? Okay, once again, I want to reiterate. So the Democrats are looking at their current economic poll numbers coming out, over the weekend and coming out today. And this is apparently Eric Swalwell's response, as you can see, this came out just today, to try to figure out how do Democrats do better messaging on the economy, and they apparently think this is their freaking solution. I need to see that again, okay? This is glorious.
Hey, Congressman,
Trying to help you?
what the fuck is up with Trump always chickening out on tariffs?
Anything else?
No, that's it.
What is that even supposed to be? I don't get it. Nobody what even is this, right? So, this is, of course, repeating a trend that we have seen, which is apparently the Democrats simply believe, hey, if you cuss more, that'll make you more relatable to the American people, right? Because we're losing the middle class. Everyone knows that's what the middle class likes to do. Normal folk, okay? You don't talk so refined and educated like us. You like to say cuss words because, you think back to JFK, you think back to Bill Clinton when he was, destroying the Republicans in 1990s. That's what it was all about, right? It wasn't because of the fact that they had some type of message or a policy platform or actual ideas that resonated with people. It wasn't because they connected on a deeper level. Hey, heck, 2008 Obama, okay, prime example. Forget actually trying to connect with people, inspire people, whatever, right? No, instead we'll just say, what the F is up with Trump's tariffs, and eat Taco Bell and then be like, haha. So guys, this is how Democrats are going to recover their devastating numbers again here on the economy, right? People don't think that Democrats are the party of the middle class. Whoa, guys, did you see Eric Swalwell eat the Taco Bell? This is what you middle class peasants eat. Don't look, I'm just like you, truly. So there you have it. It's just unbelievable. Last piece of potential bad news for Democrats on the economic front I want to share is today, the Axios reporter for the economy actually went out and admitted that perhaps the real sense of, Americans doing better in the economy could be missampled by polls, right? Which is to say Trump could potentially be doing better in this regard simply because Trump derangement syndrome is clouding potentially how people reflect how they're actually feeling. So take a listen to this as well for yourself. And I think this is an interesting point about how, when you consider, hey, if Republicans have a +7, +9 issue and the country's basically 50-50, Republicans now I think are like R+1 nationally. So we're like 1% more than Democrats, but it's basically a 50-50 nation. That, hey, if Republicans are up +10 on an issue, it's probably more like +20. And Trump derangement syndrome is just stopping people from admitting that. So take a listen.
The poll also asks which party best reflects their view on a range of issues. And when it comes to crime, the economy, immigration, Republicans still hold an advantage, although actually those numbers are starting to slip. How did you think about this poll as you were looking through?
I couldn't help but be reminded about a big problem in my part of the world, the econ part of the world. We can't get a clean read on how consumers feel about the economy because the data has been infected by partisanship, really in an unprecedented manner. So,
meaning your partisanship reflects whether or not you think the economy is good or not?
Do people think the economy is not doing well, or do they just not like who's in the White House? This is a huge problem right now, and it's making it impossible to get that clarity that economists like to see about how consumers are doing. Do they intend to spend? Makes it impossible to forecast.
Now look, you might even interpret what she's saying as the opposite of me. Like, hey, is she trying to cope to say, no, actually, Trump's less popular than you think on the economy? But to that, I say, no, absolutely not, right? When you look at, for instance, okay, Democrats and Republicans now tied on the party of the middle class, for instance, and the nation is essentially 50-50. That probably means Republicans are more like +5, right? Because again, we have to consider the makeup of this country, okay? Like I said, Gallup poll now says America's like R+1. So it's like 1% more Republican than Democrat, but basically split down the middle. Trump won the popular vote by, what was it, like 1.7 points? Okay. So again, when you're looking at a country where the Republicans are like +9, +7, anywhere in that ballpark on the economy, that suggests Democrats are seriously screwed, right? They're completely being decimated, because even independents, even apparently maybe some registered Democrats are saying they support the Republicans more on these types of issues. That is devastating. And frankly, guys, I'm not sure that Eric Swalwell eating Taco Bell is going to recover that situation. But, that's not my problem. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.